Hello, my name is Christy Alexson. I'm 2018 WIFS Woman of the Year and CEO and founder of Single Point Financial Advisors. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Leveraging Financial Planning to Grow Your Practice, presented by Chia-Li. Just a quick note regarding Q&A. Questions or comments can be typed into the question box located to the side of the presentation at any time. Questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation as time permits. Before we dive in, let's take a minute to get to know our speaker better. Chia-Li is Ph.D., CFP, and PMP, is a succession strategist of Value Growth Institute, dedicated to helping private business owners increase the equity value of their firms. She is the award-winning author of the books Show Me the Money and Work Toward Reward. And her blog and newsletter was named a top small business resource by the New York Times, You're the Boss blog. She is an assistant professor and director of financial planning program at California Lutheran University. Chia-Li's clients include the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, U.S. Pan-Asian American Chamber of Commerce, North Carolina Governor's Conference for Women, Count Me In for Women's Economic Independence, Westinghouse, Northeast Utilities, General Datacom, and numerous mid-sized privately owned businesses. Please join me in welcoming Chia-Li.
Thank you, Christy. Welcome to today's session. I actually was a director for corporate financial system in a Fortune 100 company many moons ago. And before I transitioned into the financial industry, I had about 176 people on my team, and I travel a lot. I had so much stress from that particular work. One day I woke up in the morning that on the right side of my neck down, paralyzed. After spending hours in emergency rooms, I didn't know what was going on with me, and the doctor just simply gave me muscle relaxers. All I remember was I slept for 1 week straight. After that, I discovered that I actually had a severe form of a myofascial. And that required surgery. I, at the time, could not afford the time to have that surgery. So instead, I had acupuncture. But that last 2 years of a treatment. And I knew that I have to make some changes of my job, even though I was making real money. I mean, I was making a lot of money. Somehow I came across Susie Orman's first published book, and obviously that was many years ago. After reading that book, I hired a certified financial planner, Paul, who lived in Texas at the time, and while I was living in Connecticut. I was so fascinated by Paul's financial planning process and realized that that might be my next career move. After Paul delivered our comprehensive financial plan, I realized that Paul could not give us definite answers to two questions that I had in mind. First, can I afford to retire now? And second was, could I actually afford to make a career change? So it left us really puzzled at the time of we didn't really get a definite answers. Plus, Paul flat out turned me down on the investment management since I did not meet his criteria. And his criteria was $1 million threshold per one account. And I puzzled for many months, wondering, there got to be people out there that need financial planning that didn't meet those thresholds. It just doesn't make sense. So I decided to give myself two criteria before to change my career. First, I must pass CFP exam as indicating that I had a proper training in financial planning. Two, I must save up for 4 years worth of living expenses as my working capital. While I save up the startup capital, my husband TC and I started to search for where do we want to retire. Now, TC wanted to be closer to his parents, but not too close. And he wants to stay on the East Coast with the warm weather, but not Florida, not Georgia. So we ended up spending 3 years purposely vacationing in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina to find a perfect retirement home when I was just about late 20s at that stage. We both liked Charlotte, North Carolina the most and decided that we wanted to wait. We should just wait until we retired to move there. But after so much stress coming in from work, we decided that why wait? Why don't we just move down there? As soon as I met my two criteria of passing the CFP and 4 years of real living expenses as working capital, I quit my job. I quit my cushion corporate executive job, and we moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I thought having a CFP will help me excel in my startup financial planning practice. Well, I was so wrong. I was technically prepared, but I was not business savvy ready for the financial planning business. Although I was a rookie of the year, but there was plenty of challenges to be successful in the financial planning industry. So today, I'm going to share with you 3 things that potentially can help growing your business. First, let's delve into the consumer demographics first. Then we'll take a look at the 6 steps in financial planning process and also look at what is the disadvantage of using modular financial planning approach in your business. My husband TC is a baby boomer. As you can see on the screen that there's a number of different categories there. So baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. I am a Gen X, were born between 1965 and 1979. And millennials were born between 1980 and 1994. And Gen Z is born between 1995 and 2014. And my daughter is a Gen Z. So as you can see, as a family, we have some communication issue there because each one of us are in a different categories from a demographic perspective. But first, let's take a look at what are the percentage of US population accounts for baby boomers in 2012. For those of you coming to the webinar, in the chat box on the right-hand side of your GoToMeeting, in the bottom of it, you should see a URL that you can click on it or copy and paste into your browser. So if you don't mind to copy and paste or simply click on that URL on the chat box, that will bring you to the poll website. And I wanted to see if we can do the poll together to see what everyone's answer is. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. So on the chat box, you should have a URL that you can click on, or you can simply type in the URL that you have on the screen to enter the poll session. Or alternatively, you can text CHIALICHIEN 388 to the number of 37607. It will directly bring you to the website, but you still need to enter the poll URL there before we go into the session. All right, so I'm assuming that some of you are there, and I'm going to switch to the question itself. So many of you should already have that questions in front of your website, and that question is what percentage of the US population accounts for the baby boomers in 2012? In 2012. So let's see how many of those answers are coming in. Hopefully that you have the opportunity to enter that. We are going to have a couple more questions coming in that I would appreciate that you participate, you answer accordingly. So other than this questions, there are more coming in. So if you have not got a chance to set up your URL, please do so, and we'll be able to see that quickly. All right, so let's take a look at, I'm assuming that most of you have the opportunity to do that already, and let's see what is the correct answer. It is only 20%. So let's take a look at the US Census Department's report. So I'm going to change my highlighter here a little bit so you can actually see. In 2012, we have, these are the baby boomers that accounts for about 20% for the entire population. If you structure your financial planning practice solely based on servicing baby boomers, they might support you for a while, but by 2035, the baby boomers' assets potentially might move off your book of business unless you replace them with a different age group's client base. Okay? And so you have to watch out for what you do with your client base, not to mention that by 2060, baby boomers will be moving off the chart, as you can see that on the screen. So what does a baby boomer need for the next 20 years? And if you have the poll website still up, I'm going to ask you to enter that question. This is simply typing them in. Type in, what do you think baby boomers would need for the next 20 years? And I'm assuming some of you have baby boomers as a client base. So type it in to the website, please. And I'm assuming that you have access to it, so if you can type it in so we can actually see what is the answer. All right, income distribution and planning and estate planning, long-term care. Okay, very good. All right, what else do they need? And this doesn't have to necessarily do with money. Money to live post-retirement, very good, very good. Long-term care. I saw a news clip yesterday in PBS regarding about the long-term care and the correlation between long-term care as well as suicide. So that's something interesting to watch for the next 20 years as our baby boomers aging. There's going to be a lot of things coming up. Yeah, helping them downsizing. And downsizing could be physically downsizing their home or physically downsizing their spending, right? Or physically downsizing their dream vacations or gifts to their children or supporting kids for their college. Ability to afford the healthcare, right? So for many of us, healthcare is probably by far the most important in our mind when it comes to retirement stage, because we simply don't want to have any kind of issues while you are in retirement, because we wanted to continue to conserve that capital that we have in place. All right, so let's take a look at what baby boomers actually, and thank you for participating of entering your answer on the screen. And so let's take a look at what baby boomers will be needing for the next 20 years. So let's take my husband as an example. He is near retirement and he wants to retire today or yesterday. He complains all the time, but I wouldn't let him. And don't laugh. I know that even though we've been married for a very long time, and I know when he's not working, he spends money. And plus, I believe it's better to have people generating income from their human capital assets as long as possible to sustain what I call physical and mental fit. Human capital assets basically means that you have much investment in you as a person, and if you can generate income from your human capital, then you are better off to preserve your overall assets. So example of spending during the retirement, we typically spend down the portfolio of financial assets. Portfolio of financial assets basically means all kinds of financial assets account, such as your IRA account, 401k account, or mortgage account that's not qualified, cash value in your life insurance, annuity account, qualified or non-qualified. All of these are portfolio of financial assets. Now, when they spend down their portfolio of financial assets, they could potentially do things such as traveling. As I mentioned earlier, many early retirees love to travel, especially long distance trips. They spend a lot of money early stage in the retirement. They may potentially spend on medical. As they age through their retirement, they may spend more in the medical as they go through if they didn't keep up with their health. And they may potentially do nothing, but still spend their living expenses of their daily living. They may need more transportations. They may need more entertainment, right? Because you have time, you would do entertainment. Especially if you have grandchildren or kids that you gets spoiled. So you could potentially spend down your portfolio of financial assets very quickly if you don't pay attention of those. The key here is that the more you preserve your portfolio of financial assets, the more you can stretch your assets throughout your life. But if your practice are highly concentrated in a client of baby boomers, that age group, you might lose out your firm's equity value. Because if you have more than 25% of concentration of a particular client type or revenue type, it is increasing the risk of your business, and hence it decreases the equity value of your firm. The rule of thumb is you don't want to go over 25% of the concentration either on the revenue type or the client type. And the client type could be age group. The revenue type could be commission. It could be assets under management. It could be recurring revenues, or it could be a one-time revenue. The key here is to have them diversified. The idea here is to structure your business revenue just like investment diversification that you would have recommended for your clients. Your business model has to work for you, especially your future operator, regardless about you being in the business or not. The map that you see in front of you, I use this a lot with business owner clients to help them formulate something that works for their future business operator. Now, early on in my financial planning practice, I was told to tell clients that we are the quarterback for their financial affairs. Here's the problem. I never understood quarterback concept. I don't know anything about football. I don't watch them, and I don't really understand the game. So I rarely use football analogy with my clients at all. This is what I said typically to my clients. I said to them that I am their project manager for their financial affairs. My job is to assemble a team of subject matter experts, and that includes many of you on the call today. These team members include tax, legal, insurance, divorce, sometimes it's happened, financial behaviors, credit counseling, and so on and so forth. But you always start with client goals and objectives, not just financial. So the next questions I need you to type it into the website is, so what are the most common client goals and objectives? What are the most common client goals and objectives? Type that into the chat the website, please. Type that into the poll website, and let's see what are some of the common clients' goals and objectives that you typically hear from your client. Okay, early retirement, very good. So other than early retirement, common client goal is I want to retire early, right? Some people tell me I want to retire at age 50. All right, get kids through college, very good. Time with grandkids, travel, yeah, very good. Paying off debt, yeah, you're right. Student loans, mortgage, credit cards. One thing that always advise clients to do is, pay down your debt as much as possible. So these are all the common goals that you potentially can see from the clients. Education, retirement, yeah. And typically education and retirement are what we call competing objectives. Oftentimes that they could compete with the client's objectives of accumulating enough in the retirement. So let's take a look at what are some of the common goals that we typically see from the client. Thank you for participating in that questions. Here's a list of common goals and objectives that you probably often hear as a financial advisors and planner. They like to look at their current lifestyle. They like to talk about their retirement. They like to talk about their education for their kids or maybe for themselves. just like me when I was trying to change my career path way back, and potentially looking at parent care. Many of us in that stage that parents need our cares, as well as potentially estate type of planning, special needs in the family. But I go beyond these common goals. For example, as a Chinese American, our number one goal in life is to put our children through higher education. Therefore, there will be no argument about saving priorities that might conflict with retirement or education. So take my daughter as an example. She received her bachelor degree of biology from Virginia Tech a couple years ago. Then she actually went out of state and cost us approximately $250,000. I know this sounds a lot, but it's crazy in today's education costs. But we are very proud of her. She is completely independent, financially independent of us. She is on a full scholarship and salary in her Ph.D. program today. She is about 30 years in her study in muscle stem cell biology. I know it makes me sound so smart, but in layman's term, she actually studied the connections between human cancer and the meat that we eat that naturally mutated. Oftentimes that I don't know what I'm talking about, what she's studying, but we are very proud of her. So that's our number one priority. Most Asian Americans have those priorities, and we don't have any room for negotiation as far as savings toward that. Our second priorities are our parents. My in-law lives in DC area, and my parents who lived in Taiwan. And so the travel expenses that we have to set aside annually is not negotiable, not to mention our financial responsibility to them. So taking care of our parents are in our Chinese blood. Unless you are unable to, you are expected to. So taking the time go beyond clients' common goals, get to know them, but you need to get to know them well unless you spend the time to get to know them. So by definition, what is financial planning? So type that in the website, please. By definition, what is your definition of financial planning? Let's take a look at your definition of financial planning. So type that in the website. Share with us what is the financial planning definition that you often share with your clients. So I'm going to give you a moment to type that on the website. Clients come to you and looked at retirement, education, estate planning, long-term cares, any sort of things that are coming to you. What is the definition of financial planning? Okay, comprehensive view of legal and financial aspect. Okay, very good. Helping people identifying their assets and align with their goals. Okay, very good. A couple years ago, I have one center of influence who is a regional CPA firm, and my ex-partner at the time and I asked this particular owner of the CPA firm, what do they see financial planning and specifically, estate planning? And it was shocking that the owner of that CPA firm told me, you're trying to sell me insurance. And so you can imagine that from a client's perspective and from other financial advisors' perspective, such as CPA, they actually don't see financial planning as your definition that you put on the screen. The other definition came in is helping others with their spending plan and help them with their immediate long-term goals. Yeah, so you see, our definition is so different than our consumer's definition and the CPA story that I just mentioned to you. But let's take a look at, thank you very much for sharing that on the website. Let's take a look at what is the definition from the CFP board's definition. CFP board's financial planning is a process that determining whether and how an individual can meet life goals through the proper management of financial resources. And financial planning integrates the financial planning process with financial planning subject area. So here is the keyword, integrations, right? You have to be able to integrate their financial resources, right? Right. Financial resources is beyond just the financial portfolio that I mentioned earlier. They are beyond that. It's more than just the financial accounts that you typically deal with for your clients. Here is the sixth step of financial planning process, but let's walk through a recent client case. So I'm going to name her Cindy. So Cindy has an RIA firm who came to me late last year to do a financial planning, which includes succession planning for her firm. So step one, we agree upon what is my service engagement, and that includes the scope of the service, the budget that she has for the project, as well as the timeline. And I have many women mentees over the years in the financial planning industry. One common issue that they have always tell me this is that they don't feel like charging their clients for a fee for financial planning. And I often tell them this. I said to them, why don't you picture yourself walking into an attorney's office or a doctor's office, and picture that the attorney and the doctors saying this to you, I don't feel like charging you a fee today. I don't think that's going to happen if you find out somebody like an attorney or CPAs or doctor telling you that they don't feel like charging you a fee. Please let me know. You see, the problem here is that we are providing a valuable service to our clients. You deserve to receive the fee for the service of the advice you provide. You need to have that confidence to say that I am worth it for the clients to pay me, that to give them those advice, just like what Cindy is doing with me in this case. Step two, Cindy has to provide with lots of documents that I identify what I call a list of documents that I need, enable for me to go into the analysis. The documents that Cindy provided me, including her personal information, plus her RIA firm's tax returns, financial statements, revenue types, last year's business valuations, credit card statements from the firms, bank statements, bylaw of the firm, operating agreements, buy-sell agreements, lease, employment contracts, and so on and so forth. Most importantly is what are Cindy's goals that she has to provide for me, enable for me to kind of paint the right path for her to help her transition her business. And that's one of her major goals. Step three, I have to magically validate everything that I receive in the data and to find out where is Cindy is today and to see if there's potentially any gaps. And if there's any gaps, what are possible solutions that I can help Cindy with through the planning process? And step four, I do a preliminary testing. And this preliminary testing is just to see, am I still answering Cindy's goals? And am I still aligned with what Cindy is looking for? And step five, I took her and her team through the recommendation. However, I typically do recommendations so different from most of the planners that you come across. What I did instead is I held an exercise with her and her team to do what I call a self-discovery exercise. The reason I do that is I believe self-discovering is much of viable solutions for the clients instead of me telling them what they need to do. Why do I do this? Because I believe clients need to have the accountability and ownership of their own problem as well as their solution. Our job, especially my job, is to facilitate the process and guide them through that technical aspect of the implementation and strategy. So an example for things that you could do if you're not doing succession planning for your clients, then what you can do is what I call scavenger hunt for their budget. I always tell my clients to do a scavenger hunt in their budget. Find out what can they do, what can they save in their monthly basis, because without that cash, discrepancy, the cash flow discrepancy there, you will not be able to help them implement what you want them to implement. So facilitating that process to help them self-discover is in my number 5 step. And that is really crucial. And oftentimes clients will come to me and I trying to jump a step into the implementation, and I will always tell them to hold on. For example, Cindy tells me that, well, I wanted to go ahead and hire people to replace me. And I tell her to hold on for that. We have to go through, set her business strategy for the next 1, 2, 3, and 5 years. After we have a clear strategy picture in place, then I asked them to kind of draw the career path picture in her firm. So I actually helped them draw that career path, which that they have never thought about because they didn't know that there are layers of financial planning jobs that they can put in her firm. And so once they see that career path, they themselves is much more clear about who they bring in. Then we go out and fill out that job profile for who are they actually looking for before we actually put that job posting out there and hire people. Please don't let your client jump you ahead to the implementation. There are certain steps that you can help them go through, facilitate that process. And at the end of step 6, we monitor the progress. Just 2 weeks ago, they called me about what their progress is about their hiring, and what they tell me about they're based on their expansion plan. They're looking at several properties, so on and so forth. So monitoring your recommendation is ongoing process, and chances are that they typically renew their planning process with me on an ongoing basis. So what are some of the planning subject areas that you can bring value to your clients? So on the poll website, please answer that questions. What are some of the planning subject areas that you potentially get asked to do and can provide advice for your clients? So go ahead and go onto the website, answer that questions. What are the planning subject areas that you can help your clients with? I'm going to give you a moment to kind of look into, and maybe something that you have mentioned earlier. What are some of the planning subject areas that you can help your clients with? Type that into the website, please. Pension decisions, very good. Pension, insurance, distribution planning, healthcare. A couple years ago, a client came to me about a pension decision. She lives in North Carolina, and North Carolina pension system that I was in shock when I heard that a couple years ago, that she has a option to choose from many different distribution options. And she was single at the time, and she has one adult son. And in North Carolina, she was able to select an option called put her son as a joint to receive the pension. And her son is only about 30 something at the time. And it was very interesting and intrigued. You typically have the pension plan with jointly with the spouse. In this case, it was jointly with the son. And you can just imagine that how much would have cost the state of North Carolina for that kind of pension design. So yeah, you're right. Some of the planning area could be retirement specifically for the pension decision, distribution planning, how you actually distribute from your accounts appropriately to preserve that wealth. And estate planning, retirement planning, income planning, risk management planning, tax planning, business planning, education planning. Very good job, guys. So these are all the planning subject area, right? So that includes potentially looking into their cash flow, insurance planning, risk management. Many of you answered that already. Thank you very much for typing that into the website. Employee benefits planning. Oftentimes I tell the client, leverage your employee benefits first before you go out and pay out of pocket. Investment planning, income tax planning, retirement planning, estate planning. All of these are common things that you see. Things are not on the list, including charitable planning, right? There are clients that are charitable inclined. Education funding planning, succession planning, as I mentioned earlier, and how about family office governance planning? So these are all potential planning subject area that you could do. Now, let me share with you another example. If you actually use modular approach versus a comprehensive approach, I think you have a lot to lose. So this is another example. So John, a prospect, came to me months ago. He told me that he has 3 financial advisors working for him today. He gave each one of the financial advisor $1 million to manage. And I asked him if any of his financial advisor knows his net worth. Now, John reluctantly questioned, why would they need to know my net worth? And I asked John, well, what you gave them is a portion of what I call the investable assets, or what I call many assets that he owned. And that category that I have mentioned earlier is called the financial portfolio assets. So in this example, in the retirement balance sheet, assets includes financial portfolio assets, rental real estate assets, direct business ownership assets, human capital assets, social capital assets. What John had effectively done is he gave a piece of that financial portfolio assets to the 3 financial advisors, but not able to integrate all the assets that he owned. And that's what I mean by assets management. Not necessarily assets under management as our typical terminology, but assets in management. Not to mention that he needs proper protections, risk management area that many of you mentioned earlier, community and social perspective, family legacy goals, and ultimately a goal-driven financial planning. So if you just use the modular planning approach, you may be losing out a lot. I know that many of you, financial product implementation is your end game, and it's great for your business revenue. I totally agree. But without that comprehensive financial planning, you might just check the box of the suitability. And we know that what is best for clients is not necessarily just that particular product that you implement. And I do believe that what's best for the client's interest, it's oftentimes you have a full picture of looking at beyond just one financial portfolio asset, but looking at the entire balance sheet of their finance aspect, as well as the various different goals. So let's walk through an example of a case study. So on my screen, I have David and Pat. Pat is 40, David is 55. They came to your office and asking for education funding advice. They tell you that Sarah is 7 years old and they are currently, and that's the only child that they have, and they're currently at 35 federal income tax bracket. If we use a modular approach, meaning just looking at education funding approach, I'd like to know, what is your recommendation? Type that into the website, please. If you're simply looking at education planning modular approach, what would be your recommendation in this case? Knowing that David and Pat started late in their life, their child, Sarah, is 7 years old. Their tax bracket is 35% federal level. Type that into the website. What is your recommendation for them as far as the education funding? Type that in the website. Let me know and share with me, what is your recommendation for the education funding? I know many of you have recommendations, and I wanted to see what are some potential recommendations that you could share with us. I'm going to wait about a few more seconds before I move on to the next slide. I wanted to see if you have some suggestions for what would you tell David and Pat in this case. Fund their retirement first and put it into the 529 with other disposable income, very good. Weight of 529 and 401k contribution, okay, very good. Cash value life insurance. Aha, very good. Yes, you're actually getting on something. Okay, so let's see what do I have in here. I know that you are going to jump to the financial products first. So let's take a look at um, if you use beyond just a modular financial planning on the education funding in that case. Your answers are excellent. Those are typically what I call financial modular kind of solution. So here are some of the funding for education. You could suggest to your clients that they may pay as they go out of the current assets or current income. They may also look into government tax incentives, right? And they may also look into scholarships and loans. And they potentially can tell their children that they might want to work through school. Parents can engage systematic saving, just like the one you recommended, 401k, wave between saving to a 401k and 529 plans, and even life insurance cash value. Thank you for suggesting that. Many people don't know cash value in life insurance is a great vehicle to do that. And you may potentially having parents giving gifts to children to set aside early enough to do that compounding effect. Or many of the combination of the techniques here. Or you can suggest grandparents or other relatives to pay directly to the education institute. That's not considered gift. They can pay directly to the education institute, or they could directly pay to the medical institute. Those are not considered gift. Therefore, there's no tax about that. So if you use a comprehensive approach, then you will walk away more than just a 529 account, just the life insurance cash balance account, just the balance between contribution to the 529 or 401k. It is all about the best interest of serving your clients from the arts and science of financial planning. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that is it's all about the arts and science of financial planning. The science part in this case could be involving in calculating how much education funding needs that they need to set aside using the time value of money approach, or calculating how much they need to save each month to achieve that amount before Sally goes to the college. But what about Pat and David? What if they are not looking for college? What if they are looking for the boarding school or the prep school? And some of the things that I'm going to highlight on the screen, just to give you some idea, the science of fiduciary responsibility, right? Many of you will do that, check the box, doing the right things. But what's important is you need to focus on what could be potentially disrupting the industry, such as fintech, right? The robo-advisors, and things such as these you need to actually look at before you suggest too far off alone. Okay, let me see if I can get my mouse back. All right, I think I lose my mouse and I might potentially have to, so bear with me. I'm going to slide to the next page, but I may potentially still have the mouse trapped in there. I'm going to ask Cassandra, do you have control over the mouse over my screen? I'm wondering if I can just get rid of that and go to the next page.
I do not, but you should be able to click to your next slide.
Yeah, somehow I missed my mouse.
Maybe just do your arrow.
I think my mouse has completely disappeared. Bear with me.
Yep, try the arrow on your keyboard. We can see your mouse.
You can see my mouse, but I can't see my mouse.
Yep, so just use the arrow on your keyboard.
I got it. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, speaking of technology, right? But what I'm saying here is using the comprehensive financial planning to structure your business as many ways as you like in the industry. There are 12 different career paths in financial planning. Oftentimes that many people tell me the barrier to entry of the financial planning is so high because it's commission based. Says who? On your screen, you can see there are 12 different channels. And there are many different type of salary position as well in the financial planning industry. Maybe some of you just haven't found the right entry yet. So take my financial planning practice as an example. When I first entered the industry, I went through an independent broker-dealer channel. So that's on the left-hand top corner here. That's a franchise independent broker-dealer. I was affiliated with SageMark Consulting. I did well. I was Rookie of the Year and I have a very nice book of a business, but that's not what I want. So I left them many years ago. Today, I'm a fee for advice, retainer, or project-based financial planning practice that specializes in servicing privately held business owners in their succession planning. And I don't sell any financial product at all. Now, the road that I have traveled in the financial planning practice is different than many of you that have come across. And I recommend you to really reevaluate your structure of your business model. Look at your client type by using the demographic, diversifying the client type to structure your business for a much longer term. And looking at financial planning from a 6-step process from a project manager's perspective, not just from a modular perspective, and not just from a financial aspect, looking in from a client's overall life goals. And most importantly, sustain your business by leveraging comprehensive financial planning to do the right thing for your clients instead of just doing the modular plan. And the most important thing is that you have fun doing the financial planning with your clients, not just doing a job. So with that, I'm going to open up with questions.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting, and I just have to give you a lot of credit. I love your slides for the process. It's sometimes hard to visually show people that process, and your 6-step planning process was really easy to follow. So thank you for having those great slides. The first question I have here is if one has a practice already that's highly concentrated in baby boomers, will that increase the practice value? So is there a benefit to that, or is that not a benefit?
Thank you, Chrissy. So the question is regarding about if you have highly concentrated baby boomers in your client base, will that benefit you or not? Now, depending upon which stage are in your business. So if I take Cindy's case, which is the RIA firm case, to do a valuation of the firm, and if the baby boomers age or younger in their age, then yes, there will be a higher value in that case. However, if the age group are more toward 70s or 65 and above, that actually would potentially decrease the value of your business. Oftentimes, the valuation firm will dissect your client base accordingly to price the value of your business accordingly. So my suggestion to you is, if you have a large concentration of the baby boomers, you need to act fast, not only to work with their children, but you also need to start looking into younger generation or accumulation stage of clients coming in. Otherwise, your business will be too high risk for any buyer to buy you out. So Christy, that was my answer. Hopefully that answers the questions.
It does. I did buy a practice a few years ago, and one of the things that I wish I had given a little more attention to was the weighting of the upper end of the boomer clients, because
Correct.
Those assets are going out. And while I still feel like paid a fair price, I think that hindsight, when I'm looking at evaluating buying a practice from other
Right.
people, I've definitely given a lower weighting. So if I'm giving a 1%, for assets that they have, whatever the equation is, I'm now it's a 0.9 or a 0.8, depending on how heavy they are in that
Right.
But yeah, it's a real thing to look at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I want to remind the audience that if you do have questions, type them into the box on the chat box on your screen on the side, and we will ask them as long as we still have some time available. I do have a question that comes up often in our office. How do you determine the price to charge? Is there a guideline for pricing for financial planning
Very
modules
good.
container?
Very good. Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm going to give you my thoughts, but then there's always some industry standard that you can follow. My thought about that is I believe we are just as capable as the CPAs, as the attorneys, as the doctor that the clients work with. Therefore, there are a couple of things that I will look at. CPA typically charge $150 an hour. Attorneys typically charge $250 an hour. And depending upon your specialties, you can flex in between that range. But I go above $250 an hour because I believe I have a very specialized area. So then you have that hourly rate determined. Then you look at how long does it take for you to produce a plan. Now, you may have junior planner in the office to actually produce the plan. That's besides the point. But you have to look at how many hours you actually produce, and plus the service call that you have to help them in between, helping them the implementation. So in a nutshell, I would say that typically if someone who doesn't have a high net worth is a very easy plan, it could go from anywhere between 5,000 and up. But I have seen typical planning fee goes from 7,500 all the way up. A couple years ago, I charged one plan for $25,000 just for one plan. And so really depending upon what are you trying to provide that service for. And remember that step one, that is your service engagement. So typically if you go to a Fidelity and TD Ameritrade, these big box store, they will charge about 3,000 and up if you are a client of theirs. Typically they can waive the fee. But I say that there are two separate services that you ought to really consider that. But I will say start with the hourly fee first. Did I answer your question, Christy?
You did. And, I've done some research on this and asked colleagues across the country, and I do find there is a coast differential. So middle of the country tends to charge a little bit less than the coast, and depending on where you're at. But yeah, these are numbers that I hear fairly often, though I will say attorneys in this area are double the rate that you just talked about.
Correct. Yes.
Another question you brought up, junior advisors. How do you leverage a planning team of advisors?
Yeah, so typically I like to have that team figure out that career path first. So the last case that I worked on with the RIA firm, there are literally 4 layers of the team. So I want you to visualize ladders, if you will, of a practice. So the junior advisor, we break it into 2 different levels for that particular firm. Every firm is a little bit different. So they have junior advisor 1, junior advisor 2, and then go into the advisor level. And then they go into the managing advisors as well as the operator advisors. So you can structure various different levels depending upon whether or not that advisor eventually wants to get to equity of the firm. And so the junior advisor could be also break it into servicing advisor or lead advisors. So there are many different ways that you could structure it. But ultimately, what I would encourage people to do is to look at the structure of your business to see which career path makes sense for your firm. And the firm that I worked with previously, they actually break that into 2 parts. One side is strictly technical. The other side is strictly marketing, sales, and servicing. So there are many ways to drive that career path, but I would definitely encourage you to look into that. And I'm happy to come back again to talk about that as a separate session, if you like.
Okay, great. And I know we're running short on time. I have another question. I don't see any others in the box right now. So if you have one, type it in now. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping up. You do financial planning teaching, and so when will the CFP board update the planning steps? When are they going to do that?
Yes, and that is starting in October 1st. We already have all these materials, but I don't want to confuse you. Yes, starting October 1st, the planning step is 7 steps. And so those 7 steps are different. They actually take the engagement outside of the financial planning. They added in more steps as far as a client communication engagement. So that is going to be effectively on October 1st. But until then, we will still be talking about the 6 steps. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. So do you, we're running short on time. Do you have a final call to action that you can encourage our members with based on your talk today?
Yes, I would definitely, if one thing to take away today is to start thinking about things that you could do today that machine are not yet able to do. And that would be your advice. Machine are not yet able to do that kind of advice yet. So focusing on that, then you will do well, because pretty much soon that machine will replace us, specifically on those fintech and robots, things that they can do today. Stay out of that, because that will be none of your business. What you are bringing the value would be the advice that you give them, your experience, your advice will definitely help your clients far better than the machine can do today.
That's excellent. I actually wrote that down, and I'm probably going to use it online today. Thank you. Chia-Li, thank you so much for your commitment to providing us with and our members with quality programming. We appreciate you being on today.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So for the attendees, we'll be sending out our audience a brief post-program survey and ask that you take a moment to complete the questions, because your feedback is of great value and helps us planning future programming. We'd like to thank our corporate partners for supporting women in the industry. And please visit the WIFS website to access today's presentation, past webinars, because we put all the recordings there, and to register for May's education webinar. This webinar is now ending, and we thank you all for joining us.